All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us begin. Today's daf is daf Vav. We are picking up Emir Hashem on daf Hey on days 5b. We left off. Where did we leave off yesterday? All right. So we left off, it is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 lines up from the bottom. So if you remember again, we left off with the last major machlokes that we were talking about in yesterday's daf was in the presence of how many people does the get have to be given over. So machlokes, is it 2 people? Is it 3 people? So at first, the Gemara wanted to suggest that machlokes is based on the concept of whether or not we say shliach na'aseh eid and eid na'aseh dayan. So the Gemara then ultimately again rejected that idea by saying by in dinei d'Rabbanan, everyone agrees that eid na'aseh dayan. So that can't be the machlokes. So therefore says the Gemara, so what is the machlokes? Here we go. Here's what we're arguing about. Demar Savar. Since as we spoke about in yesterday's daf, a woman is kshera, is permitted to bring her own get. Remember we spoke about this case where halacha l'maisa, the husband says, "This is your get and you are divorced." Let's say again, they're in Medina Sayam. He sends the get with her and he says, "You're divorced once you arrive in Eretz Yisrael." Such a situation ultimately works. Zimnin demaisila isisa. Sometimes it can happen. The woman's bringing her get. V'samchi Allah. Ultimately, again, and they may end up relying on her for kiyum shtaros. So I'll say, even though a woman is permitted to bring her own get, she can't go ahead and be part of the Beis Din to go ahead and do kiyum shtaros. So the problem is, if in this case we allow shliach na'aseh dayan, then it might turn out that you might have a case where she's giving it over in front of 2 people, and they may erroneously assume that she could be the third for kiyum shtaros purposes. Therefore, again, the first opinion says, let the get be given over in front of 3 witnesses, or 3 people. That way, again, we won't run into any confusion. With the Gemara says, the idach, isha meidi yodi v'lo samchala. Others say, no. People know that a woman is not going to be part of the group for kiyum shtaros, and therefore they will not come to accidentally include her as part of the group. Okay. Tani kavasi Rabbi Yochanan. So we say, Rabbi that supports Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, maybe get Medina Sayam. V'nasnula, in this case, bring a get from Medina Sayam. So Reuven's divorcing Rachel. Reuven's in Medina Sayam, and he goes and he sends a shaliach to give the get to Rachel. So what happens? V'nasnula, the shaliach gives her the get. V'lo amar la b'fanei nechtaf u'b'fanei nechtam. And ultimately, again, they didn't say, the shaliach never said the words b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. So what's talacha? We'll say, watch this. Yotzi, if she remarries based on that get, she has to leave her second husband, v'avlad mamzer. And any children which come from that second marriage are mamzerim. Why? As a result of failure to say b'fanei nechtaf or b'fanei nechtam. Now we'll challenge that in just a moment. Div Rabbi Meir. These words are Rabbi Meir. Chum say in havlad mamzer. The Chum say no. The child from the second marriage is not a mamzer. So Kate Yasa. So what should be done? Yitlena hemena. So take the if the shaliach failed to say b'fanei nechtaf or b'fanei nechtam, you could remedy this. How do you remedy it? Take the get back. Right? So again, Kate Yasa Yetleno. Take the get back. V'yachshav yitnel Allah b'fnei shnayim v'yomar b'fanei nechtaf or b'fanei nechtam. Take it back and just give it back to her again in front of 2 people and say b'fanei nechtav or b'fanei nechtam. Now I will say the whole reason this is being brought down over here is why? Because how does it say how many people you have to give it over in front of her? Two people, right? So that's Rabbi Yochanan. So that's why this price is being brought over here. That this is a proof that the get is given over in front of 2. So it says the Gemara Rabbi Meir. Mishum delo amru b'fanei nechtav b'fanei nechtam yotzi v'avlad mamzer. So I will say the Gemara is bothered by a secondary issue now. So I will say so understand another open machlokas we have. We have a couple of open machlokas and just keep a running tally of them. We have to figure out who do we pass like Rabba or like Rava. Now what we also have another open machlokas is in front of how many people does the get have to be given? Ultimately, again, is the get given in front of 2 or is the get given in front of 3? That's also an open machlokas. That's an open machlokas. Now we'll say now number 3. Interestingly enough, What happens if a get is given and b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam is not said? So, and again, let's say, so again, here the Gemara is saying, not a problem, just take it back, say it again, and then give her back the get. Now, both say, now here's what's interesting. So Rabbi Meir, let's focus on Rabbi Meir for just a moment. So Rabbi Meir says, if you give a woman a get, and you fail to say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam, and now she remarries, and she has children, Rabbi Meir says, essentially it's adultery, and the children from the second marriage are mamzerim. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Because you didn't say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtam, the second marriage is an illicit one, and the offspring are mamzerim. Does that make sense? To which the Gemara says, in Rabbi Meir l'tamei, Davraham nun mishnei de'ula, Omer hayir Rabbi Meir. Meir used to say, Kol mishana mimatbe'ah shetavu chachamim begittin, yotzi v'havlad mamzer. They both say this, and we're going to talk about this more throughout the Masechta. But Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that Chazal made a matbeah. They coined a process. And you cannot deviate from the process. And if you do deviate from the process, ultimately, again, any subsequent marriage is going to be invalid, and ultimately the offspring mamzerim. So I will say this is Rabbi Meir's kind of like severe penalty for deviating from the format of Gittin. Why does Rabbi Meir have such a severe repercussion? Because Rabbi Meir feels if Gittin processes are not streamlined, so all it's havoc. It's havoc. And ultimately, again, it leads to profound genealogical disruption. Therefore, Rabbi Meir says there's a way to give a get, and there's only one way to give a get. And if you deviate from that way, we invalidate your entire process. So I will say you could hear the logic of this. There are certain things that are pivotal and crucial to the genealogical purity of Klal Yisrael. One of them is Gittin, and the other one of them are conversions. So I will say, so it's no accident that like two of the major hot button issues contemporarily are Gittin and conversions, because on one hand, again, it's very tempting to find leniencies, and it's very tempting to find different mechanisms, again, for a variety of different reasons. On the other hand, the need to keep such a tight hold on these processes and ensure that standards are not eroded are absolute necessities to the continuity of the Jewish people. So just interesting, different studying with these ideas. In any event, the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, good. Barhedya by Lasui Gittin. So we'll say Barhedya wanted to deliver a get. So we'll say again, he's the shaliach. He's the shaliach for a get that is coming from Medina Hayam. So Barhedya by Lasui Gittin. Asla Kamid Rabbi Achi. So he brought the get before Rabbi Achi. Rabbi Achi was in charge of Gittin. Right? He was in charge of the Gittin. So Amarle, Tzarech ata lamod akol os v'os. So this is interesting. So remember, the shaliach has to say b'fanei nechtav or b'fanei nechtam. B'pashtos, what this is referring to over here is we're going with the assumption, like Rabbah, that really what the shaliach is attesting to is that the get was written lishma. So I will say, so here's an interesting question: how do you testify that a get was written lishma? Right? What do you have to see, or what do you have to know? So apparently, what Rabbi Achi was saying was telling Barhedja, you have to be there for the entire writing of the get. You have to see the sofer writing every single letter and know that he's writing it for the sake of this man and for the sake of this woman. Also, looking at Rabbi Asi, Barhedja afterwards went before Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi. So say the notion of asking for second rabbinic opinions is not a new idea. And anyway, so then what happens? Barhedja goes in front of Rabbi Ami, Rabbi Asi, asking the same shayla. Amrlei, lo tzrichas. No. You don't have to stand there forever. You don't have to be there for the whole writing of the get. V'chitema avid l'chumra. So maybe you'll say, Barhedja, you want to be machmer anyway, and stand there for every single letter. Nimtza atamotzi laz ala Gittin arishon. You can't be machmer with Gittin. Why? Because we'll say if you're machmer with this get, then you're casting aspersions on previous Gittin. We're going to talk about this in a very important way. This principle that we have to be, on one hand, we're going to be machmer with Gittin, but we can't be machmer on things that people were not historically machmer with. Why? because then it turns out that Lamaisa, if you start being machmir on something now, then ultimately, what about all the Gittin beforehand that you weren't quote-unquote machmir with? You're going to cast aspersions on them. So we're going to talk about that afterwards as well. Rabba Bar Bar Chana, I see Gita. So let's listen to this. Rabba Bar Bar Chana once brought a get. He was the shaliach. So Palga Ichtav Kamei, Palga Lo Ichtav Kamei. Part of the get was written in his presence. Part of the get wasn't written in his presence. Asak with Rabbi Lazar, he gave Rabbi Lazar, Amarle afilu lo kasaf bo elashita achas lishma shuv enot tzarech. So let's listen to this. He came before Rabbi Lazar, and Lazar told him, don't worry. As long as one line of the get was written in front of you, lishma, and you know that it's being written for this husband, this wife, that's enough. So Rabbi Lazar is saying, shaliach, in order for you to testify that the get is being written lishma, you need not see the entire get, even one line. Even one line is absolutely fine. So the Gemara says, Ravashi said, top of Vav, Afilu is very, very interesting. Afilu kan klumasa bekan megilta. So Ravashi said, the truth is, even if all you hear, Rabbi say, literally, kan klumasa bekan megilta means the sound of the quill and the sound of the quill against the parchment. Look at Rashi. Afilu shama kan klumasa bekan megilta. Tikuna kolmus vaklav shama kishtila. Let's just skip a little bit in Rashi. Velinira kan kolmusa kol hakolmus kishu kosev the kol hayiriya kishu nishma. So Rabbi said, it's interesting. So Rashi said, even if all you hear is just the writing. And Rabbi said, when you write against parchment, you could hear the writing against the parchment. So it's all the shaliach. Even if all you hear is just the writing, that's going to be enough as well. So in other words, even if all you know, essentially, you don't have to see the writing, you just have to know that the writing is being done, and specifically you have to know that it's being done for the sake of this man and this woman. Tanya Kavase di Ravashi, right? Says as far as Ravashi, if a person brings a get, from overseas, afiluhu bebayis v'sofer ba'aliyah, even if the shaliach is in the house and the sofer is in the attic, he ba'aliyah, hu ba'aliyah v'sofer bebayis, or the shaliach is in the attic and the sofer is in the home. After all, say so again. So what does that mean? These are cases where you don't even see the shaliach, right? I'm sorry, you don't see the sofer. Right, but rather again, what's going on? Again, the shaliach knows that the sofer is writing the get, even though he doesn't see it. Afilu nichnas v'yotze kol yom kulo kasher. Even if he's going in and out of the house every single day, it's kasher. To which the Gemara says, fine, so we'll say kasher. Now the Gemara says as follows: Hu b'vay sofer ba'aliyah ha lo kachazile. Now one second. Here's what's interesting. What's the case here? What's the case over here? If halacha l'maisa, this one of them is upstairs, one of them is downstairs, so obviously then again the shaliach is not seeing the sofer. Ela lavki gon d'shama kan klumasa v'kamegilta. Rather, what's the case? Obviously he's hearing the parchment against the quill, right? L'maisa, again, in this case, he's hearing what's going on, but he doesn't see what's going on. Okay. We'll say what you begin to see from this is that the ability to testify about Lishma does not require the Shaliach to be present for the get in its entirety. In fact, it may not even require the Shaliach to see the get at all. So what does it require? It requires knowledge. It requires knowledge and it requires proximity. So in other words, Shaliach has to know that the get is being written for this man and this woman, and he has to have proximity ultimately again to where the get is being written. So the Gemara says as follows: Amar afilu nichnas yosek kaliyam kulo kasher. Even if he's going in and out to the house the entire day, it's kasher. To which the Gemara says, man, who's going in and out? Who's going in and out? Ilay mashaliach. If you want to say that it's the shaliach who's going in and out, sahashta hu b'vay sofer ba'aliyah delo chazile amrit kasher. So one second. If we already said that if one of them is upstairs, one of them is downstairs, then it's going to be kasher. The Gemara says, Amr kasher nichnas yotzi mibai. Obviously, going in and out is going to be kasher. As I will say, if the entire time the shaliach is upstairs and the sofer is downstairs, or vice versa, they're not seeing each other. So why is that going to be any difference than nichnas v'yotze? That if someone's going in and out, or if the shaliach is going in and out, ela sofer. I will say, listen to this. Rather, who's going in and out over the course of the writing of the get? It's actually the sofer. The sofer is going in and out. To which the Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. Mishum denichnas v'yotze nafsal. I don't understand. So if the sofer is writing the get, and during the writing of the get he goes in and out, why would we think that the get would be possible because of that? Rabbi, so listen to this. Lo tzricha tinafik l'shuka. So we'll say, now watch this. Watch this. I would have thought, what's the case over here? The case is where the sofer is going out to the marketplace. So we'll say, watch the case. So sofer is writing a get for Reuven and for Rachel. Over the course of the get, what happens? He takes a break. He takes a shpatzir, right? He goes out to the marketplace. What are we concerned about? Watch this. Ma'adetema, in shachrina ashkeche va'amrlei. Now let's say, maybe we have to be concerned that when the sofer is in the marketplace, who does he bump into? Another guy by the name of Ruvain, and Ruvain says, I want to get, hey, Sofer, so hashkacha pratis are empty you over here, I'm divorcing my wife, right? Sofer says, okay, what's your name? Let's talk. Oh, it's Rachel. What do we have to be concerned about? That maybe when the Sofer comes back after his break, he's going to continue writing a get for Reuven and Rachel, but for which Reuven and Rachel? Which Reuven and Rachel? Second Reuven and Rachel. Kamash Malon, we're not concerned about that. I will say, by the way, what is the Gemara talk? What is the Gemara? Who's what I tried to highlight over here? Let's say the greatest danger in life is distraction. And what the Gemara is saying is the Havamin is how easily we get distracted and thrown off task. See, here you have a sofer writing a get. And he's writing a get for Reuven and Rachel. So the Gemara has to say, if he's nichnas v'yosei, right? If he goes out and comes back in, the get's still going to be kosher. What should I be concerned about? I'm concerned about distraction. Maybe he's going to go into the marketplace. He's going to meet another Reuven who's also divorcing his wife Rachel. And when he comes back and resumes writing the get, he's going to have in mind for the second couple and not the first couple. Now let's say the danger of distraction. We know this all too well in life. We start on a task, and we'll say what ends up happening. Again, and it could be distractions come in all forms. We think about distractions like you're just busying yourself with something else. Distractions come in all forms, and sometimes distractions are even meaningful things that I get distracted by. Sometimes the key to success in accomplishing the things you want to in life is drowning out the distractions. If something has to be accomplished, I would say sometimes it's about shutting the phone. Sometimes it's about saying, you know what, for the next, and maybe it's only 20 minutes, I'm focusing on this and this alone because it needs to get done. So often in life, we don't accomplish the things we need to accomplish, not because we don't want to, not because we don't care, not because they're unimportant, but because unfortunately we allow ourselves to get distracted. And we know how it is. Once distraction sets in, I will say, it's very often difficult to get things back on the rails. So that's the Havamina. The Havamina is that once the sofer gets distracted, he can't get back on. Kamash Malon, we're not worried about this kind of distraction. Good. Let's go back to Itmar. So we'll say Bavel. New topic. Bavel. So we'll say Rav Amar Keretz Gittin. So we'll say, so what's the status of Bavel? Up until now, we've been focusing on Medina Sayam, and we've kind of grouped Medina Sayam, right? There's Eretz Yisrael, and there's everywhere else. Okay, there's only one problem. Bavel was a major Torah center. So, and I will say in certain respects, at times throughout Jewish history, right, the center of Torah was Bavel and not Eretz Yisrael. So we'll say, so here's the Shaila. What's the status of Bavel? So Itmar, Bavel, Rav Amar Keretz Yisrael Gittin, Ushmol Amar Kichutz La'aretz. Incredible. Machlokes. Rav says that Bavel has the status of Eretz Yisrael, and Shmuel says like Chutz La'aretz. Now both say, now why is this? What does this mean for our purposes? For our purposes is if you bring a get from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, do you have to say B'fanei Nechtav or B'fanei Nechtam? So Rav would say no. The same way that within Eretz Yisrael itself, if you bring a get from one area of Eretz Yisrael to another area of Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say B'fanei Nechtav or B'fanei Nechtam. So too halacha l'maisa. If you go ahead and you bring a get from Bavel Torah, so you also don't have to say B'fanei Nechtam. Shmuel says yes, you do. Shmuel says that Bavel is just like Chutz La'aretz. So what's the machlok? So what are they arguing about? The Mar Savar. Here we go. Lefi Shem Mikiyin L'Shma V'Hani Gemiri. Oh, so we'll say this is incredible. All roads lead back to Rabbah and Rava. All roads lead back. So maybe, again, everything is rooted in that initial machlokas. So ultimately, again, so we'll say one opinion says the reason we say b'fanei nechta or b'fanei nechtam is because the fishein biki and l'shma, and in Bavel they are biki and l'shma. They know the halachas of l'shma. That's Rav. V'hani gemiri. Umar sa l'fishein edim suyin l'kaimo. Second opinion says like Rava. No, the reason you need b'fanei nechtam or b'fanei nechtam is a form of kiyam shtaros. And I will say, here's the problem. From Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, you still run the risk of not being able to have immediate access to the witnesses. Therefore, let's certify the document. V'hani nami lo shlichi. And therefore, again, Bavel, you're going to have the same issue. So we'll say that's machlokas. I v'tizbara. Ha rabba islei d'rabba. See, I will say, this is the same line we keep seeing over and over. Remember, I will say, one of the most startling revelations we've had over the last couple of days is Rabba holds like Rava. In other words, Rabbah is not disagreeing on Rava, but rather what? Rabbah is adding on to Rava. Right? So Rabbah is saying, yes, Rava, I agree. Lefi she'ein edim mesuyin. I agree with that. And in addition, there's a problem with chutz la'aretz of ein bikim l'shma. Therefore, I will say, even if you remedy the l'shma issue, in other words, let's say you want to say that in Bavel, they are bikim and l'shma. Fine. You're still going to have the issue of ein edim mesuyin l'kaimo. In which case, everyone should agree that halacha l'maisa, if you bring a get from Babel, it shni b'fanei nechtam, ella t'choli ama b'yina l'kaimo. So I'll say, rather, everyone agrees that you have to go ahead and do b'fanei nechtam because of kiyum shtaros. But watch this. Rav Savar, kevan de'ika mesifta, mishkach sheichi. This is very interesting. Rav Savar says, since there's a major yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, in Babel, Rash's Mesifta, yeshivos kavuos, achas busura v'achas benarda, v'holchin talmidim mizu l'zu, umishar ayaros lahen limotoras. Well, so listen to this. One opinion says, since Babel has yeshivas, so therefore I will say what? The students shuttle back and forth from the yeshivas in Babel itself, and also to Eretz Yisrael. And also, right? But in Bavel itself, they shuttle back and forth. Therefore, again, it's Eidin Mitsuyin Lekaimo. Right? Because they're shuttling back and forth, therefore, again, people are around. Most of that Eidin Mitsuyin Lekaimo either means the witnesses themselves are available, or you have enough people who will recognize the signatures. So the Gemara says, Ushmuel Silber, listen to this, Shmuel holds, Mesifta Bigir Saihu Tridi. Rabbi say this is great. Shmuel holds that, no, that yeshiva bachrim, they're learning. And because they're focused on their learning, they're not focused on what? On the signatures, right? They're not going to be so aware of whose signatures are who. Fascinating. So Itmar Nami, we learned this as well. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna. By the way, I just want to point out, the machlokis by Bavel has two ramifications, right? The ramifications are, number one, bringing a get from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, but also in Bavel itself, right? In Bavel itself, if you bring a get within Bavel, is there an obligation to say b'fanei nechtav or b'fanei nechtam? So remember again, I will say, when Rav says that Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael, so remember, in Eretz Yisrael itself, if you bring a get, do you have to say b'fanei nechtav, b'fanei nechtam? No. So we'll say, so again, it's a twofold machlokes. Itmar nami, am Rabbi Amma, am Rav Huna, asinu atzmino beBavel, Eretz Yisrael begin, Nechi Asa Rav LeBavel. What's this to this? Rabbi Abba said this as well, that in Bavel we made ourselves like Eretz Yisrael from the moment that Rav came to Bavel. I will say, what did Rav do when he came to Bavel? Take a look at Rashi. Nechi Asa Rav LeBavel, the Kavi Yeshiva B'Sura. Rav set up his yeshiva in the city of Sura, Tishu Shmuel Havi Ben Arda. And Shmuel ultimately was an Arda. So we'll say, see, here you have it, that once Rav, now we'll say, so essentially once Rav came, you have Rav in Surah, Shmuel and Arda, we made ourselves in Bavel like Eretz Yisrael. Made ourselves in Bavel like Eretz Yisrael in terms of Gittin. So the Gemara says, Master Rabbi Yirmiyah, so one second. Here's the problem. Say, look at our Mishnah. What did our Mishnah say? Rabbi Huda Omer, so he was going back all the way to the first Mishnah. Rabbi Huda Omer, Merekim LeMizrach, Merekim LeMizrach. Remember again, what did our Mishnah do? Our Mishnah outlined the borders of Eretz Yisrael for Gittin purposes. So we said, Me'rekem le'mizrach, right? Rekem is the eastern border, and Rekem itself is like the east. Me'ashkelon l'daram, Ashkelon is the south, but Ashkelon itself is like Chutz La'aretz. Me'akol l'tzafon, from Akko to the north, va'akol kitzafon. Now we'll say that 1 second. Where is Bavel? V'ha Bavel l'tzafon of Eretz Yisrael kaima. Bavel is to the north of Eretz Yisrael. Dichsiv, v'yomer Hashem Elai, mitzafon tiftach hara. Right, because the pasuk says, Gemara quotes over here the pasuk from Yirmiyahu, right? Literally again, from the north, evil will come. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out something absolutely amazing. How incredible is it, right? The Gemara says Bavel's to the north, and how do you know that Bavel's to the north? Because the pasuk in Yirmiyahu says it. That's how you know that Bavel's to the north. Just take out a map. I understand, Jews, we might not be like the most geographically astute people, right? But Lamaisa, right? But Lamaisa, I don't understand. Just take out the map. You see, we'll say rather, what do you see? What do you see? For a Yid, for a Jew, reality is not defined by what your eyes see. Reality is defined by what the Torah HaKidosha tells us. Because just because your eyes see it doesn't mean it's true. What the Torah tells us is truth, because a lot of times the eyes could see things. You know, so remember again, when you see something, you don't see objective truth. What do I see when I look at something? I see filtered, personalistic, subjective truth. Right? When I see the world through my eyes, I process that through my reality. Right? Through my circumstances, through my life story, through all the different things, right? All of my different isms and all of my different ashkafas. So it's very important. So what you see is not reality. What you see is your interpretation of reality, which is why ultimately, again, using Torah as our guiding light is the most important thing in the world. Because Torah is the only thing which provides us with objective truth. So the Gemara says, how do you know that Bavel's to the north? How do you know that Bavel's to the north? It's not because your eyes see it to the north of Eretz Yisrael. It's because Yirmiyahu Hanavi said that Bavel's to the north. I would say such an important thing in life, because so often we think we have it all figured out. Right? We have all the truths, because I see this and I know this. Be careful, because what you see is your version or your internalization of the truth, but may not actually be MS. So important for us to be rooted in Torah. Torah ultimately provides us with the true compass and provides us the true emes. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Rabbi Meir says that Akko is like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin purposes. And even Rabbi Meir only holds Akko. So we'll say, so again, I don't understand. So how can we even be having a conversation that Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin when we have the explicit Mishnah that tells us that halacha l'maisa, Bavel, right? Bavel's Chutz La'aretz. To which the Gemara says, "Who most of love, who mafarik la lebar mi Bavel." Good answer. And what does the Gemara say? You're right. Everywhere to the north of Akko is going to be Chutz La'aretz except for Bavel. So I'll say essentially what the Gemara is saying is you're right. The Mishnah gives the borders, but Bavel is the exception. Bavel is the exception. And I will say, it makes sense that Bavel is the exception, given the fact that Bavel became such a center of Torah. Adeichani Bavel. This was interesting. Where does the border of Bavel extend to? Rapapa says, Ki machlokes liyuchsin, kach machlokes legin. I will say, this is actually interesting. It will say it's in Rashi quotes over here from Maseches Kiddushin. So I will say, we're going to see in Bavel, they were exceptionally meticulous with preserving genealogy, proper genealogical records, and also very, very careful with who everyone married. So I'll say, so apparently there's a machlokes for genealogical purposes, what the borders of Bavel are. There's also machlokes for Gittin. So the Gemara says, Rav Yosef, machlokes liyuchsin, machlokes v'yuchsin, aval Gittin divrei akol, ad arba tinyana de girsha. So I'll say, everyone agrees when it comes to Gittin, ultimately, again, what's the border of Bavel? The border of Bavel is the second willow tree next to the bridge. Good. Apparently, again, that was, saying, there's sometimes a beautiful simplicity in things that you see, right? Where does the entire country of Bavel end? Oh, it's the second willow tree by the bridge. So beautiful. Okay, the Gemara says as follows. Rav Chisda, say, sometimes you see something that's like so simple, We live in such a complex world. Sometimes it's not so complex, so we make it so complex. And like you see something, like, where does it end? The second willow tree by the bridge. Okay? Rav Chisda matzrich me'akistefon le'be'ardishar, or be'ardishar la'akistefon le'matzrich. So I'll say, Rav Chisda required befanei nechtaf ubefanei nechtam, when going from akistefon to be'ardishar, but not from be'ardishar to akistefon. Okay? Why not? Why not? So the Gemara says, Lema kasar v'lefi shem b'kiyim l'shma v'ani gemiri. Maybe I will say because Rav Chisda holds that the reason for Fainechtam is the din of l'shma. And maybe again, in one city they were b'kiyin, second city they weren't b'kiyin, v'tizbra. But once again, v'haraba is leidirava. We'll say, remember again, even if you take away l'shma, we still have the issue of edim mitzuyim l'kaimo. Elo tucholi amo be'inan l'kaimo. V'hani kevan da'azli l'shuka l'hasam. Hanach yadi bechasimas yada dahani. V'hani b'dahanach lo yadi. So we'll say, interesting. Since again, the people of one place used to go ultimately again to the marketplace in the other city, therefore again there was Eidin Mitsuyin L'Kaimo. They recognized the signatures. But the people who had the marketplace, say they had the marketplace, so they didn't recognize the signatures. My taima, Bishukayu Tridi, because they were very busy, ultimately again, tending to the financial needs of the marketplace. Okay? Ra barafuna matzich me arsa la arsa. So we'll say, so again, just want to point out, it turns out, well, let's finish this up. Rabbi Baravuna, Masich me arsa la arsa. So this is fascinating. Rabbi Baravuna required b'fainechtam, even when taking Gittin from one row of houses to another row of houses. Now, what does this mean? If you look at Rashi says me arsa li arsa, mishuras habatim. So say, if you can imagine like this, imagine for a moment, you have a row of houses on one side of the street, then a street, we'll call that Rosh Hashanah, and then houses on the other side of the street. So Rabbi Barafuna said, even if you're bringing a get from one side of Rosh Hashanah to another side of Rosh Hashanah, you have to say B'fanei Nechtav or B'fanei Nechtam. Okay? Rav Sheshes Matzrech Mishchuna L'Shuna. Rav Sheshes required it from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. The Rava Matzrech Be'osa Shchuna. And Rava required it ultimately again, even in the same neighborhood itself. But Rava was the opinion who says that the reason you find Nechtam is because witnesses were not right. It's not easy to go ahead and identify signatures, but this is all happening in such a small geographic area. Why would you have a problem going ahead and identifying signatures? Listen to this. Shiny b'nei Mechuzah. Let's remember again, Rava lived in Mechuzah. So in the city of Mechuzah, we'll say first of the wide lines on the bottom, the Naidi. So we'll say the people of Mechuzah apparently used to travel all of the time. So I'll say, so because they traveled all of the time, therefore what? They never really recognized each other's signatures. So really quite interesting. So I will say the point over here, what's the point the Gemara is trying to make? You could have, again, even if we take care of the Lishma issue, which to a very large degree feels like the Lishma issue has been taken care of. Why is the Lishma issue been taken care of? I will say two words. What were the two words? Yesterday's daf, or Shabbos' daf? La'achar shalamdu. It appears that at a certain point in time, Chutzlar, it's caught up with Eretz Yisrael, and pretty much everyone was on board with writing Gittin Lishma. That's what it sounds like. So we'll say, but Lamaisa, even if you take care of that, we still have Ein Eidim Mitsuyin L'Kaimo. And what you begin to see over here is, technically speaking, you could have Ein Eidim Mitsuyin L'Kaimo even in a very small geographic area, like these examples just brought down over here. Incredible. To which the Gemara goes weiter. Rav Chanan Mishtoi. So Rav Chanan was talking about the following case. Rav Kahana Aisi Gita. Rav Kahana once was a shliach to bring a get. V'lo yadana im Yisrael Narda, imi Narda Surah. I don't remember if the story was that he was bringing it from Surah to Narda, from Narda to Surah. Again, two cities in Babel. Also, Rav, he came before Rav. Amrli tzirichna l'meimar v'fainechtam olo tzirichna. So I'll say, so ultimately again, Rav Kahana is bringing this get. So they didn't remember the details of the story. Was it being brought from Surah to Narda, from Narda to Surah? Okay, in any event, he comes before Rav. Rav Kahana comes before Rav, and he asks Rav, Rebbe, do I need to say b'fani nechtaf or b'fani nechtam or not? So Amar lei, lo tzrichas. Rav said, no, you don't have to. Rebbe said, now why not? Because how do we paskin? Remember, this is the same Rav. What did Rav say before? Rav holds that Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. Like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. Therefore, halacha l'maisa, Rav said to Rav Kahana, you don't have to say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtav. Amud beis, v'i avaneta ahanis. But if you did it, it works. Right? In other words, so Rav Kahana was saying, so Rav was saying to Rav Kahana, you don't have to say b'fanei nechtav u'b'fanei nechtav, but if you did so, it works. So what does that mean? My i'avaret ahanis. What does that mean? If you did it, it works. Di'i asi bal ma'arer lo mashkechinan bei. And I will say, watch this. Remember again, I will say, what Rav was saying was like this. You don't have to say b'fanei but if you do it, it works. I will say, what is the power of b'fanei nechtam? What's the power? The power ultimately is that halacha l'maisa, it makes the get uncontestable. Right? The husband can no longer go ahead and come along and say, and cast aspersions on the get or cast doubt on the get. So what Rav was saying to Rav Kahana is, you don't have to say v'fanei because Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. But if you did it, it works. If the husband comes along and lodges a complaint about the authenticity of the get, we simply will not pay attention to him. Here we go, like we learned. 6b, 3 lines down. There was once a guy who brought a get. He's the shaliach. There was once a guy who brought a get to Rabbi Shmuel. Amarlo, sarich ani lomar v'fanei oh, eno sarich. Do I have to say b'fanei nechtam or not? Amarlo b'ni mehechanata. So Rabbi Shmuel said. So Rabbi Shmuel asked him, "Tell me, my son, where are you from?" Amarlo, Rebbe mikfar Sisoy ani. I am from the village of Sisoy. Amarlo, sarich ata lomar u'b'fanei nechtam shelo tezakek le'edim. So therefore, Rabbi Shmuel said to him, look, you know what? You should go ahead and say, this way again, we don't have to go ahead and start finding the witnesses if the husband contests the get. Fine. So listen to this. So I'll say, after this guy left, nichnas the fun of Rabbi Eloi. Rabbi Eloi came over to Rabbi Shmuel. Amarlo, Rebbe, v'alo kfar sisoi, muvlaas b'tchum Eretz Yisrael, here's what's interesting. Kfar Sisoi was actually, again, outside of Eretz Yisrael. But it was absorbed within Eretz Yisrael. Right? So I was going to say, if you can imagine, I guess just the way the border worked a little bit, if you can imagine, right, the border is going down, dips in a little bit, Kfar Sisoi was in like that pocket. So Kfar Sisai was, so to speak, absorbed within Eretz Yisrael. Utar Meir Omer, Akko Eretz Yisrael again. Right? Rabbi Meir said Akko was like Eretz Yisrael again. Uvafilu Rabbana lo pliga le Rabbi Meir ela ba'Akko demirachka. Even the Rabbana only argued on Rabbi Meir about Akko because Akko is so far. Aval Kfar Sisai demekarva lo. So essentially, we'll say what Rabbi Eloi was saying to Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi, why did you require that guy to say b'fanei nechtam? Essentially, Kfar Sisai is like Eretz Yisrael. It's like Eretz Yisrael. And the halacha is that within Eretz Yisrael itself, you need not say b'fanei nechtam. So Rabbi Eloi, it's interesting, I just want to point out, Rabbi Eloi didn't ask Rabbi Shmuel while the questioner was there. Right? It seems to be like Lamaisa again, he didn't want to question his Rabbi while the questioner was there. But Lamaisa again, after the guy left, he said, Rabbi, why? Why did you require him? So let's listen to this. Amarlo, shtok b'ni shtok. So listen to this. So interesting. Rabbi Shmuel says, essentially, be quiet, my son, be quiet. Right? Why? Hovil v'yatsa hadavar beheter yatsa. Since ultimately, again, essentially, since I gave the psak, I gave the psak. Now I will say, now what's the pshat? Why did Rabbi Shmuel do this? Ha'ihu nami shelo tezakek le'idim ka'amar. So we'll say, ultimately, again, remember, Rabbi Shmuel was saying to what was Rabbi Shmuel saying to Rabbi Eloi? You're right. He didn't need to say Fanechtam. But I will say, there's a power of saying it, even if you don't have to say it. Right? What's the power? It makes the get bulletproof, right? It makes the get uncontestable. So ultimately, Rabbi Shmuel was giving him an eitzah so that now there's never going to be a need to try to track down witnesses to authenticate the get. Lo samio kameh. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Eloi kind of missed part of the conversation over here, right? He didn't see everything that was happening in front of him. So we'll say, so it is interesting to see. It is interesting to see how ultimately, again, Rabbi Shmuel, the Lashon uses shtok b'ni shtok. In other words, because Rabbi Shmuel was saying, essentially, Rabbi Eloi, you're right. So we'll say, so sometimes you see that this is an incredible idea. Sometimes what, like, the concept of Daas Torah, what great people possess is a vision that goes beyond the letter of the law, right? And as I was saying, any of us can learn a body of halacha and master it to the point where I know how to pass in the shayla mutter aser. So as I was saying, what Daas Torah means is the ability to see things even beyond the stated mutter aser psak. For whatever the reason, Rabbi Shmuel felt that in this case, it was best, let the guy say b'fanei nechtam. He doesn't have to. You're right, he doesn't. I know he doesn't have to. But Lamaisa Rabbi Shmuel, for whatever the reason, felt that it was a good idea to make this an uncontestable get. It was a good idea just to solidify it now, so no one, i.e. when I say no one, the husband, can't cast aspersions upon it in the future. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Shalach le Rav Yasser of Chista. Get ready. What a great case over here. I'll at least start this. Shalach le Rav Yasser of Chista. Rav Yasser center of Chista. Gittin haboy misham lekan ein tzarech lomer b'fay nechtam. So I'll say, so ultimately again, Rav Yasser sent to Rav Chista, Gittin that come Misham. I will say, so Misham is from Bavel, Lekan, here to Eretz Yisrael. You don't have to say b'fanei nechtam or b'fanei nechtam. Okay, it's a statement. Lema kasav lefi shem ikim l'shma b'hani gemiri. So we'll say, what's the logic? The logic is Rav Yasser must hold that halacha l'maisa. The reason you have to say b'fanei nechtam is why? Lishma. And in Bavel, they know how to write Gittin Lishma. Okay, just 1 second. V'tizbara, once again, v'harabba islay derabba. But 1 second, we already established, even according to Rabba, who says that it's a din in Lishma, he still agrees with Rabba with ein eidim mitzuyin lekaimo. And b'pashtos, from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, you could still run into the issue of ein eidim mitzuyin lekaimo. Ela dukuli alma b'inin lekaimo. So I'll say, rather, you're right. You still, even if we take care of the Shema, you still need b'fay nechtam, ultimately, again, to serve as a source of kiyum shtaros, to validate the get, in order that we don't run into a problem later on of trying to track down the witnesses. So why don't you have to say b'fay nechtam for a get brought from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael? Simple. The chayvan, the ikar rabim, the salki v'nachsi, mishkach shlichi. I will say, there is a lot of traffic between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael. There's a lot of traffic, and therefore what? Let's say the get is contested, and you have to track down the witnesses, Osai, we're not concerned. There's such ongoing traffic between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael that you will be able to go ahead and solidify, not solidify is the wrong word, but validate the signatures on the document. Fine. So the Gemara says as follows. I'm Rav Yosef. Wow, and I watch this. Rav Yosef. Man leimel under Rav Yasser Basamchu. Who made Rav Yasser an authority? Right? In other words, Rav Yasser is making a statement that Gittin that come from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael do not require b'fay nechtam. So Rav says, and now listen to this. Rav Yosef says, who made Rav Yasser an authority over here? Who made him an authority? Va'od, right? Listen to this. Va'ha'iu d'shalach le'v Rav Yehuda. Supposed to say furthermore again, I have on good record that Rav Yasser one time sent a message to Rav Yehuda. What was the message? Bnei Adam ha'olim misham lekan. Ultimately, again, Jews, Bnei Adam, who left misham lekan, who go from here, Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. From Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Hein kaimu bi'atzmon v'yitnu as hayeled bezona. Vayaldu machra b'yayin v'yishtu. So listen to this. Rav Yasser was complaining about the following dynamic. There are people who were leaving Babel to go to learn in Eretz Yisrael for extended amounts of time. And what happened? Rav Yasser felt they were neglecting their families. right? They were neglecting their actual families. They were also neglecting the mitzvah Pirvarivya, of procreation. So Rav Yasser wrote a message. He wrote this message, and he quoted this pasuk. Literally, again, they make this son into a harlot, right, into a zona, and the yalda, the girl, they sell for wine to drink. In other words, so he was blasting this practice of people who left Babel for extended amounts of time to go to an Eretz Yisrael, thereby neglecting their family. Now I will say, now watch this. And Rav Yasser, in the message, the kasavle below sirtut. He wrote the pasuk without sirtut. I will say sirtut is the etching. If you look in a Sefer Torah, you'll notice again there are lines etched into the parchment. So I will say, and Rav Yasser wrote this pasuk without sirtut. He wrote it without etching. From Rabbi Yitzchak, Shtayim Kosvin, you could write 2 words without sirtut, Shalosh and Kosvin. But 3 words you can't write without sirtut. The Masnisa Tana, or otherwise we learn Shalosh Kosvin, Arba in Kosvin. So what's Rabbi Yosef blasting over here? This Rabbi Yasser, he doesn't know what he's talking about. What he's talking about? V'haraya, why should we rely on it for anything? V'haraya, he wrote a pasuk without sirtut. He wrote a pasuk without etching. And you're not allowed to write a pasuk. Can't write more, at least not more than 4 words without etching. And he wrote a pasuk without etching. So why should we rely on him for anything? To which the Gemara says, well, listen to this. Abaye says, calm down. Just because someone doesn't know this halach of Rabbi Yitzchak, that you can't write a certain amount of words without etching, that means he's not a great man. But we'll say first wide line. If you would tell me that Rabbi Yasser didn't know something that was rooted in logic, then I would agree with you that Lamaisa, again, maybe he's not such a great man. Hagimarahu, this halacha about sirtut, is a gimar, is a tradition, ugimar lo shmialei. And maybe he was just never taught this. In other words, it's actually interesting. If someone wasn't given information, then they just don't have information. There's nothing more to talk about. In other words, we'll say, if he didn't learn it, didn't learn it. So if you want to tell me that there was a certain piece of logic that he did not possess, and that shows that he's not intellectually astute, that's one thing. But Lamaisa, again, it could be that there was just a halacha that he didn't know, and therefore I will say what? And therefore he just didn't. I will say, this, by the way, is such an incredible Musar Haskell. Like, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. I want to say sometimes this happens all the time. Sometimes, right, someone gets upset at you because you didn't do something. Meanwhile, what? Well, I didn't know. I didn't know. I say it's important. That sometimes, we perceive that people fail us because they don't come through in certain ways. Sometimes, they don't come through and they're failing, and other times they didn't come through simply because they didn't know. So here, again, Rav Yosef is jumping on Rav Yasser, and meanwhile, again, he's being defended because simply he did not know the halacha. Furthermore, Va'od, Ha Rav Yasser, hu da'askim mare al yadei. We'll say not only that, we're going to Rav Yasser was great, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself agreed with Rav Yasser. Now we'll say, what does that mean? I watch this. T'chsiv, v'tizna alav pilag show. So we'll say, let me just give you the context over here, then I think we're going to have to stop here for today. And we'll say, we'll stop here for today. We'll pick up again. This is incredible story. Pilegesh Begiva. We'll say incredible story, Machlokes, about what exactly happened in the story. A little bit of Agarata as well. And Mirat Hashem Torah, we'll say, Shkoyach.